Hello, everyone. We are thrilled to have you here today. Well, tonight in the East Coast part of the world, it's become nighttime. Tonight we have a treat for you, a huge treat, and we're going to be talking about cholesterol with our cholesterol patient panel. And so on this panel, we have three wonderful people who have come to share some of their experiences with you so that you will also learn from them and get ideas and tips from them on the cholesterol journey. And the first person we have is Mike. Mike is a retired IT professional and currently an assistant regional director for the Mid-Atlantic region for Mended Hearts, as well as the vice president of Chapter 412 in Greenville, South Carolina. Mike had genetic propensity for high blood pressure as well as irregularities in his cholesterol levels. And his cholesterol issue was that his bad cholesterol was borderline high, while his good cholesterol was borderline low. And that would let the bad cholesterol, of course, win without raising a red flag with his family doctor. So this resulted in a quintuple bypass in 2018. And then we have Hyvel Ferguson Davis, and she is a stroke and heart attack survivor. She joined Mended Hearts and then turned her focus to advocacy. As she learned more about the link between diabetes and heart disease, she realized there was a gap in knowledge for many African American women facing similar diagnoses, and she felt the call to help other women like her. She founded Heart Sisters, a community for education and resources for African American women dealing with diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. She says that everyone can benefit from learning more about the right ways to manage your health, but the risk is especially high for African American women. And then we have Erin Home. Erin has been living with heart disease for over 30 years, and in 2018, Erin had a heart attack and a quintuple bypass. Facing death changed Erin's life, and in the months following surgery, as he rehabilitated his body and mind, he found that he had a deep connection with other heart patients. There is a shared experience, understanding, and intimacy between heart disease patients and those who've experienced heart surgery, and Erin wanted to bring people together to support each other, particularly in the times leading up to and following surgery, when life changes so quickly and mortality comes into focus, often for the first time. Mended Hearts of Puget Sound exists to serve the heart patient community in their region. As the Mended Heart saying goes, we are thankful to be alive and to help others. So this is your lovely panel tonight, and we're going to have a discussion with them in just a second. But we wanted to thank Amgen Cardiology for their generous sponsorship of this program tonight. So with that all being said, let's start our panel. Well, the first question I was going to ask you is, I know I gave a little bit of your background, but could you tell us a little bit more about your journey as it relates to your journey with cholesterol? And we'll start again with Mike.
Okay. I sort of view my journey as when I was, a young kid and my grandparents were traveling, taking me around with them, and they used to love to brag about how much I could eat, and so it turned into a reward thing there. The more I could eat, there wasn't no bringing me a kid's meal, bring me the full menu. But so I've always had a problem with my weight and been a roller coaster ride, gaining weight, losing weight, and that kind of thing. But then I went through that period where you're finally starting to get physicals once a year and really watching things. And as you mentioned in the opening thing there, is that I had borderline high HDL, but then the border or LDL and the borderline low on the good cholesterol, and it didn't raise any flags. And that had gone on and on and on, apparently enough that, like I say, I ended up with a quintuple bypass, and also in 2018, Aaron. So I went in to do 4, and they did 5. So I figured it's like a buy one get one free or type thing. But but it's really helped me feel better. The cholesterol medicine I'm on, I think it's what the generic for Lipitor, or the Torvastatin they call it, and my numbers are incredibly low off of that now. So it's working real well for me, real well.
Thank you, Mike. That's great. And we're so glad that it is. Hi, Val.
Thank you for having me on tonight. My journey started when I was 41 years old, and I knew nothing about cholesterol numbers, blood work, and all of the information above. And I was thrust into a world where I needed, because it was eminent that I change my lifestyle. You know, I was diabetic. I went to doctors, but I felt like I was too young to even, what's an LDL, or even the numbers, ABC, or just even getting blood work done. And I found myself 41 with a heart attack, a stroke, and having to deal to truly understand, the red flags were there. The blood work showed that I had high cholesterol and other comorbidities, which I did not really even think about being so young. And my journey started from a place of wanting and needing to find out information, because I believe information bridges the gap. So I am along this ride. I am learning, empowering myself to being a patient who cares about herself. And, the cholesterol level will always be there, and there's all type of stuff that's going on. But it's so important to get that blood work, to understand that blood work, to have the initial conversation. So I'm honored to be here to tell my story and aid to help someone understand that they need to get their blood works done.
Thank you so much, Hi, Val. And we're honored you're here as well. Aaron.
Yeah, mine started about 30 years ago. I got diagnosed with an arrhythmia and with high cholesterol within the same month. And I was an athlete in college. I was a volleyball player in college. So I got diagnosed with an arrhythmia, and I was prescribed medication. And I took the medication before a match, and I had a reaction to it, and I got taken to the hospital. I had a reaction, and my heart pinned during the match. They had to drag me out, send me to the hospital. And then the next week they said, oh, and by the way, you have severely elevated cholesterol because of genetics, and we'd like to prescribe medication. I said, I'm not interested in medication at this point. So what I had hoped, I can actually speak to the full journey of cholesterol and medication, where in my early 20s, what I had hoped was that my body, I didn't know if I trusted that they understood enough about long-term effects of statins that I would take statins for the rest of my life. And I wanted it to be the case that my body would flush out the cholesterol and it just wouldn't be an issue for me. So then fast forward to 2017, 2018, my body starts to shut down and I can't walk up stairs without being short of breath. I go to and I know something's wrong at that point. So I go to the cardiologist, I go in for stents. They go in through an angiogram to put the stents in, and they take a look and they're like, stents aren't going to help you. You're 100% blocked in a number of places. So they go back out. At some point I had a heart attack. I ended up getting same as you, Mike. I went in for 4 and I ended up with 5, and I've got the nice, the special souvenir, the 5th one on the arm, because they have to pull the radial artery. And so then lying in the hospital recovering, it came to me that, I just had a quintuple bypass, but I hadn't really addressed the underlying condition. I still had really high cholesterol. And so unless I address the underlying condition, I'm just going to end up there again. And so by high cholesterol, I mean, I have over 300 overall cholesterol, over 300 LDL. So in recovery, I went vegan. I decided to go vegan from a dietary perspective. And I just said, we'll see what I have to do. So now I take statins and I take another pill for LDL, and that was able to get my numbers down okay, but not really to a good level. And then I started taking shots as well. Every other week I take an injection, and now my numbers are low. So now my cholesterol is low cholesterol, and my LDL is low. All my numbers are low, which is a very good place to be. And I had the experience over the last 6 months where I tried to change something, where I stopped taking the one pill, and I started having chicken wings, of all things. And that shot my numbers way up high again. And so I've learned my lesson, and now I'm back, and I just got my numbers again yesterday, and they're low again. So that's good.
Well, you're doing a very good job of definitely working with that and managing your medication. But I'm going to come back to you, Aaron, with my next question is, your journey started when you were very young. And what can you tell us that you wish you had known about cholesterol then that you didn't know?
I wish I had understood how cholesterol was going to affect my body specifically, which is always the hard one, right? Because the thing with cholesterol and plaque buildup is it's really hard to tell what's actually going on inside your body, and the ways of, determining if you're building up plaque, what the levels are not without risk, right? So an angiogram is not a simple procedure. It takes, it's a low risk, but it's a risky procedure. And that's the only way that you can really know, or some very expensive, nuclear imaging things, but that's the only way that you can really know what's going on. So I wish in 2020, if I had known how my body specifically would react to cholesterol, which is it would build up massive plaque in my arteries, if I'd known that, and then if I'd also known that for me in particular, and this is not the case for everybody, but for me, I don't really have adverse reactions to statins, and that I can get my numbers down. But with that said, I don't think that the shots that I take were available until about a year ago or 2 years ago. So I don't think my numbers would have been able to get down to an effective level. But if I could look back, I wish that I would have understood that I could take statins in a healthy way, and that if I don't, my body's not going to be very happy.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of, there was a lot of controversy in the past about medications, and yet they show again and again that that was not even true, and that people who start taking something like a statin, they stop, they're like twice as likely to have a heart attack than if they hadn't stopped taking it. So a lot of those myths that went around for a while, I think, caused a lot of harm for people as well.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, which is everything about motivation changes if you're in a hospital after open heart surgery.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Now, Hyvel, for you had a lot of risk factors going on, and yet you really weren't able to kind of process the impact on you as well. What would you say you wish you had known then that you didn't know?
Well, what Aaron spoke about in reference to knowing the fact of that, the impact of truly what cholesterol does to the body, because I feel like when you know better, you do better. And, when you go and get those blood work, it's just a number. And to just making sure it's active to see exactly, the intriguing details of what it does, and just a conversation with a doctor, and not just take this medication. But truly what's going on would be a phenomenal thing as a patient to understand the intricate parts of just having high cholesterol. It was given to me that my cholesterol was high, but that was it. The conversation was take your medication. And that was not enough for me.
Right.
I believe information is power.
Yeah. And, a lot of times people don't understand a number and what it means. Well, your cholesterol's high. Okay, so what? And they don't understand, as Aaron was saying, that translates to a process in your body that is dangerous. And so, and raises your risk factors. And so I think that's something that's not really understood. And so, Mike, what, in terms of the numbers and learning your numbers and finding out about cholesterol, what do you wish you had known that you didn't know?
Well, I think for me that just I'd had better explanations of it. I didn't. It's one of those, the doctor was concerned that I had extra weight on me, but when the red flags weren't there for a high HDL, it was like, well, or you got a problem. So it was more, things seemed kind of balanced. Nobody seemed concerned, but obviously something was happening. And my dad died from a heart attack at age 62. his brother had a heart attack, and fortunately they got him to the hospital in time. And it's like, okay, this is like a genetic thing going on here, but
Yeah.
yet nobody ever really tied that together. And I didn't. I was just running along being fat, dumb, and happy, especially the fat part. And just too much weight, too much going on there. But and a stressful job. I'm finding that was a very active ingredient in the whole thing as well.
Yeah. Mike, what kinds of things do you think that your doctor could have said to you that would have been helpful at the time?
I think just let me know that I needed to adjust my diet more to get the good cholesterol up. What things to eat, what to do better there. Because like I say, I was good on the bad side, but bad on the good side, and but it just didn't get picked up. It was just one of those things that, oh, your numbers look really good. You're a little off here, a little off there, and it just got let go. And over time, it had a very negative effect. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad that at this point we're all aware of what we need to be doing, and but it can be very hard when things aren't explained to us in a way that we can use the information and do something about it. Aaron, what would you say is the most misunderstood thing about cholesterol?
Oof. I mean, the thing that I ran into in my 20s was I looked and I looked for something that conclusively said that high cholesterol has a direct correlation with heart attacks, with heart disease, right? And the hard part is, in the medical community, there's such a high bar for them to make a conclusive statement like that, for them to write something, because the thing is, it's not quite that clear cut, right? There's other things involved. Some people say, there's a protein that's involved that's similar to cholesterol, and that's the reason that causes heart attacks. It's not necessarily the cholesterol. The cholesterol is just a marker that goes with it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to get through, and I'm not a doctor. And when I was young, trying to weed through all that information and really come to a perspective of like, what am I supposed to do? Right. And like, how can I be empowered to make decisions that are really important in the absence of like precise and complete information about my specific body? And you can't ever get there. That's the hard part. You can't get to the point where you're going to know exactly what's going to happen. So you end up, in my case, in my early 20s, it was an emotional decision. I was basically like, I took a pill, I ended up in the hospital. You guys are all out of your minds, and that had negative impact. So I think the hardest part, I wish, I think it's, for me, the best thing I ever did was fast forward when I'm 40, whatever I was, 46, when all this stuff started to really happen. I just made the decision that I was going to make friends with my doctors, and I was going to completely change my attitude, because my attitude before had been like, nope, I didn't go to a doctor for 20 years, like didn't go. And so like I knew what the numbers were. It's like I'm going to go to the doctor, they're going to tell me my numbers are really high, they're going to prescribe medication, I'm going to say I'm going to want to take medication, like I can keep doing this. But so I just made the decision when I knew, when I couldn't walk up a set of stairs, I've got two kids, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna totally change my attitude towards the medical establishment. They are my best friends now, and I'm gonna go in with nothing but like open mind about what I need to do, and then I'll figure it out from there. That I think was, and that might be more like a generic thing to say. I don't know how specific it is to cholesterol. But in that particular case, the difficulty is just that cholesterol is so abstract. You
Yeah.
can't point to like broken cholesterol or something, right? It's this thing that's in your body and you don't know necessarily what it's doing. That's the difficult part about it. And so coming to a conclusion about like how you want to treat that and being at peace with that, I think is a really important part of it.
Yeah. And I think along with that, a lot of people don't really understand that you have to have cholesterol in your body. And so you can't live without cholesterol. And yet, um, when we have high cholesterol, that can have a major impact in our body. So it's just this balancing act. I do think what you're saying about there's so much confusion and misunderstanding around cholesterol, and I think we could do a far better job of, and that's why we're here tonight too, is to help people understand cholesterol and educate them about it.
Particularly if you mistrust pills. If you
Yes,
mistrust pills, right?
yes,
The issue, again, the issue is cholesterol, like you don't feel it. It's not something that like, oh, you take the pill and you feel better. It doesn't work that
yes.
way. It's this abstract thing that's going on. That's the hard part about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you think of the three main risk factors for heart attack. They're high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and smoking. And the high blood pressure and high cholesterol are both often symptom free. And so you don't know you have it, you can't see it, you feel fine until you don't. And so it's really hard. I think that's another reason it can be very hard to get our minds around cholesterol and its impact. Hi Val, what about you? You had a number of things going on. What do you think is misunderstood either about cholesterol or about the relationship between diabetes and cholesterol, or the relationship between high cholesterol and stroke?
Well, it's all related, what I love about this panel is we're from different spectrum and we all have a unique story, but it's so familiar. When Erin speaks, I'm like, that's me, that's me. And it's so important that we start, like I said, the initial conversation, which is so important. And, with me, the major misunderstanding is the fact of I had to take my cholesterol medication. Granted, there was a lot of side effects that occurred, but it's so important that we open up that line of communication if there's something that's wrong or something that you don't feel right about, and just start talking to your doctor. Like Erin said, my doctors are my friend. It's so important. So I was able to, make a communication or just a conversation reference to if I had a concern, because I went to the hospital with rhabdomyolysis after a statin, and there's certain stuff that you're not supposed to eat, and you have to be really cautious, and you're pushed into a world that you don't know. And I found out that I could said I can change my lifestyle and I could go on be a vegan or change, but it was initial. I had to take my medication because I knew the science was there and the science was on my side. And a lot of people, they get diagnosed and they really do not want to take their medication. And I tell people all the time, no, take your medication and then change your lifestyle. Work in tandem and you'll see results. So don't just opt not to. And if there's an issue, speak to your doctor. The communication is there. There's a plethora of drugs out there. If one doesn't work for you, find the one that does, and the doctors are willing to work with you with that. So the line of communication, especially with miscommunication, needs to be addressed by communication.
Yeah. And and some people do have side effects to medication, and sometimes it's just for a short period of time and it goes away. But if they have side effects from the medication, they stop taking their medication. And so, hi Val, did you have experience with that where you wanted to stop taking it, or were you just proactive and talked to your doctor about those side effects?
Well, my journey started with one pill and I was put on 21 pills at one time. So there was a lot of stuff that was going on, and there was, I was tired. I took my pills and went to bed, and I did not have a life. But I knew that, the pills were needed. It was necessary. So what we did was just weed out, what could be a cause. I had back pain. I had all type of issues with statins, especially. But I knew the pills or the medication was there to keep me alive and tandem with me changing my lifestyle. So it's important that, like I said, the communication, and don't stop. I tell people all the time, don't stop taking your medication. Doctors are there for a reason, utilize them. If you want to live, work in tandem with them.
Yes, yes. Well, good. I am very glad to hear that. And there are other things that people can try. They're not limited to trying different things and finding the thing that's right for them. And on that same vein, if your numbers, like Erin was talking about, if your numbers aren't going down and getting under control with one medication, then you can talk to your doctor about adding medications or changing medications as well. Mike, what was your experience with medications and how have you managed that?
I've just listened to these two stories here. I've been very fortunate in that, the very first thing they put me on has been working. Hadn't had any side effects, and it's working. I mean, it's unbelievable. You go to the doctor now, and he's like, people would give their right arm for to have a overall cholesterol double what you've got. It's so low, and so it's been good for me. I don't really have anything there that's astounding, other than it's working. Like I say, the medicines work. So uh, stick with that. Of course, there's other steps you got to take besides the medicine, but um, lots of stuff I could get into there, I guess. But and I think it kind of falls into the other question, so I won't get too far ahead here.
Well, that's okay. I'm going to come back to you on that since you're segueing into a question about what is your advice in terms of making those other changes? How can people do that? I know a lot of times when people are looking at like Hyvel is talking about 21 pills, and then they're looking at making lifestyle changes, and it can be very overwhelming, and you people can feel like, my life as I knew it is over. So how do you manage that? And what's your advice on, making the lifestyle changes you need?
Well, one of the things that I think I didn't pay attention to was my family history around me. What was happening there? You think, oh, well, he had a heart attack. They didn't even bring up clogged arteries about when my dad passed. And even when my uncle had his heart attack, it was like that subject never even came up. But I think for me, it's kind of the learning process of it. When we went through the rehab process, one of the classes you have to take is looking at labels on what you're eating, and looking at restaurants, what's in what you're eating. And they literally took us to the grocery store and walked us through and would pick up products, and it says, this one's low this, or this one's this. And when you really got to looking at it, you had to be really careful what you were picking up off the shelf, because you were doing as much damage there with some of the manufactured, refined ingredients, they call it, that I was just shocked at how much damage I'd been doing, because I really didn't know any better. So I learned a lot from that. And so it's got me looking and closer, and my wife's looking closer now at what she prepares. And even, the visitation in the hospital, it's something, almost everybody you go in and see is saying, oh man, the food's terrible here now. Well, I said, well, they're making it bad for a reason right now. You were used to all those good, rich, fat things, and now they're bringing you back to reality. So they don't really like me saying that. It's part of life right now. You have to balance. You have to balance what you're eating.
Yeah. And luckily today we live in a world where there's so many delicious recipes that are very healthy as well. And I like what you said about keeping track and looking at what you're eating. There are many tracking apps as well. And it can be really surprising. You put in something you thought was fairly good for you, and you put it in the app, and you're like, I think I'll not have that today. And so some of those are good tools that patients can use to keep track and make sure they're eating a healthier diet for sure. I want to go back to, and Mike, you brought this up, and Aaron, I was going to talk to you about it too, is this family history issue or genetic issue. So familial hypocholesterolemia is a genetic condition for cholesterol, and people can have high levels of something called LP little a as well, and they are both hereditary conditions. So in terms of that, Aaron, what do you feel that people should know about 70% of heart diseases is not genetic, but the 30% is. So what do people need to know about when they have a family history?
Man, that's a loaded question for me. So I didn't grow up. I grew up with a single mom, so I didn't know my father growing up, and apparently it's from his side. So I don't really know much about the cholesterol background. I did reach out to him and find out that he did take statins, and his father had died of a heart attack. He didn't grow up with his father either, so there's you can read into that what you want, but so. But I would say that the other major contributors, aside from smoking and cholesterol and things like that, are things like emotional isolation and stress. So those are big contributors to heart disease and to heart attacks. And so I had some contributing factors that I had to untangle after the fact that were some were medical and some were non-medical. Um, I think for me, it's with my kids. So looking at how I want to, I'm getting them screened at a young age so that we know what interventions might be appropriate at the right age. But it's pretty likely that they'll have it. It's pretty high likelihood that they'll have some manner of this. And for me, it just means that I don't have. I think it's the two things combined. On the one side, it's the genetic issue that creates the conditions that require medication. I can't get my numbers down by diet. And I'm a vegan, and I was a hardcore carnivore before, but I'm a vegan now. Like I said, it's because I'm in the hospital bed having had my sternum broken open for a quintuple bypass. Motivation changes in a very serious way. And so in that moment, the idea of so then you can start to look at the numbers and say, well, how long should I expect to live after this? How long, or am I going to have another one of these? Like, how does this work? If I don't do anything, I'll be back in there, by the numbers, I should be back in there in about 2 years getting another one, right? And I don't really want to do that. So there's the motivation side of it. And then the genetic side just makes it for me just something that I can do everything that I want, and I do it because I don't have many margins with it. I have to kind of do everything, which is fine. But exercise and diet for me won't get it there. And
Mhm.
so I have to look at in order for me to get my overall blood cholesterol below 150, I have to have pharmaceutical intervention. So that's just something I have to do. So the genetic side of it for me just in some ways makes it really clear. Like I can't do it on lifestyle and diet alone. I'll do it lifestyle and diet and medication, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and following up on that, you recently changed your medication and found this new medication that you are on. How did you go about doing that?
Well, I did it the wrong way. So what I did is I was feeling so after I had my surgery, I struggled for a while with fatigue, and I couldn't quite between becoming a vegan and having to figure out that I needed to add some B12 to things in order to get my energy. I isolated it down to one statin pill that I was taking, and I was convinced that the statin pill was the source of fatigue, and so I stopped taking it. I just said, "Look, I'm going to stop taking this for a while and see what it does to the numbers." And oh boy, so I was starting to I kind of crept up a little bit. I had been hardcore vegan with no oil, and then I started to eat oil again. And that was fine, and then I was like, "Okay, I'll start a little fish." That was fine, and then what got it there was I switched off the statin and I started eating some chicken, and those two things, the numbers shot up. So then I replaced the statin, which seems to have addressed the fatigue issue. And now I'm more back to hardcore vegan. I'll have fish when there's no other options in terms of getting protein if I'm out or if I'm in Texas. Those are the two times that I I have to have fish because there's no other choices. Um, but yeah, that was what I did is a swap out. But it is we were talking about it before we went on live was I've had the experience. Someone in the chat asked if it's Repatha or probably even I've taken both and I've had no effects from either. And then the statins, I've taken different ones and I've had different effects from them. So getting the right medication is key, and you can try different things. But when I came off it, it was dramatic and fast.
Well, well, yeah, so we want to encourage people not to do that. And but exploring, the different medications and talking to your physician and staying on top of, there are new therapies coming out all the time, so there are different things you can try all the time, and just staying on top of that and being involved in an organization like Mended Hearts is certainly one way to stay on top of it, because you get all sorts of good information, uh, as well as the peer support. For you, Hyvel, it was you were trying to share information on the link between diabetes and cholesterol and heart disease, especially among African American women. Did you want to help us share a little more about that?
Yes, being a diabetic, it's more complex because we know that carbs turn into sugar and those attack you, and it still also messes with the cholesterol. So there was a lot of layers that, we don't understand, as far as dealing with diabetes. And if you have diabetes, especially African American women, especially, or even just in general, there's blood pressure issues, there's cholesterol issues, and then you put high blood pressure on diabetes on top of that, then there is a space for a calamity to happen. In my case, that's what happened. So it's so important that you address each issue. And it can seem like a lot, but it's so important. Like I said, the communication is there. And, just take it one step at a time. We're fighting for our lives. And I say, we as Black women, especially because, I talk to my sisters. We go to emergency room and, we go there. It's, it could be with stress. It's not related to certain stuff. So it's so important that we gain the information and empower ourselves to be our own advocates. Because in certain cases, you go to hospital and you may not even, have a heart attack later because you've been dismissed. So it's so important, like I said, that communication is always open up. And I tell women all the time, be your advocate, especially if you're dealing with comorbidities. And, like diabetes, it's all related, no diabetes by heart. It's so important once you find out what you're fighting against, to gain the information, to just, one check at a time, one simple change. And I talk about how, lifestyle changes. It's so important that we address that, because I was bringing stuff home. I was culpable. I was bringing the stuff into my home and I was eating it. So I had to look at myself after I got my rib cage torn open and truly assess what the heck I was doing to myself. And it took a lot for me to get there, but the urgency was there. I knew what I was doing was not working. And if I continue, I'd end up on that emergency table in about 5 years, because that's what my surgeon told me. So it's so important to just breathe, take it all in, and create a plan.
I really like, and all three of you have mentioned the other factors like stress and the other different things that go on in your life that can really impact your heart health and impact even your cholesterol levels. Mike, is there anything else in terms of changing lifestyle or changing behavior around? Did you do anything to help you relax or de-stress or sleep more, or anything else along those lines?
I retired. But even saying that, they were the company I was with was talking to me about consulting for a while, and helping them get through the change. And they had a pretty good head start on knowing that I'd already talked about retiring late in 2018 anyway, like August or so. And I had the heart attack in March. And so when they started coming to me saying, oh, well, we could just get you to give us, a day here and a day there and that kind of thing, I was like, I'll answer a few questions, but I'm liking this. I'm relaxed. I know now that, like I'm digging in the yard and I bust a sprinkler pipe, before it's like, oh, boom, 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 you got to get it done because you got to go to work on Monday. And I'd be like, yeah, well, I'll finish that up tomorrow. It's just my whole image on life. I just got to relaxing more, doing more, traveling more. So yeah, it's you got to chill a little, enjoy life because it's going to get away from you in a hurry.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good advice for us all, I think. And we love the Venice in the background as well there.
I love that advice. That's the best thing I've heard. Like, let's get busy enjoying life. That's the key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think we need to put that as one of our quotes for Mended Hearts for sure. And I have one last question for all three of you, and then we have questions in the Q&A. So I want to make sure we can get to those. But my last question for each of you, and I'll start with you, Aaron, is what has surprised you the most about this journey?
Ooh, well, this is a cholesterol panel. It's hard to distinguish for me between cholesterol and heart surgery.
Mhm.
Um, they're one and the same for me. I'd say that the biggest thing for me is that heart, and I can't advise that anybody have heart surgery, but it changed my life in such profound ways because I, I was able to see death, right? So you're able to look at death, you see death, it's right in front of you, and it makes you ask some really serious questions about your life. And if we're all going to die, and so the question is, where are we when we die, and how do we feel about it? And the one thing for me, at least, was the whole process of heart surgery really changed my perspective on what it means to be alive, how connected I feel with other people, how important I think things like, love and connection and being with others and being open, how important those things are to me now because I've felt them very, very directly and personally. And so I kind of see it like there was my life before surgery and the life after surgery, and they're really not all that similar. It's very different after surgery. And I feel like I have a much healthier approach to life. And I have also a clear understanding of some of the things that were making me sick beforehand. And cholesterol was one of them, but it wasn't the only one. And so that was a real perspective shifter for me.
Wow. We have so many of our members say that they had life before their heart event or heart surgery, and there's life after it. I hear that all the time, and I do think that that's a common theme among people who've been through a huge life experience like that, and it can be one that brings you a lot more peace and harmony and compassion and understanding in your life. So it can definitely, even though it's a rough, no one would want to go through it. It definitely can lead to a lot of good things. What about you?
But you also have to, as you're going through that, I'll just say one more thing, which is as you're going
Mhm.
through that, also a lot of people go through depression during
Yes.
that process. So
Yeah.
after you've gone through the surgery, it's a big issue. And
Yeah.
so the peer support is so big. This is why we started the chapter in Puget Sound, because just having other people to talk to who have been through it is such a huge thing because you feel completely, in some ways, you feel very connected, but you also feel very alone, and it's a big issue with depression. And so having other people to just talk with and connect with is really big.
Yeah, and I think the statistic is 1 in 3 suffer from depression after a heart attack. That was
Mhm.
after a heart attack specifically, but it's a huge issue. And so and I do feel like I do know that people who get involved in peer support definitely report a better quality of life than if they don't. So I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you're providing that for other people because it's making a huge difference. Hi, Val, what about you? What has surprised you the most?
Well, it's the journey. My goal was to wake up at night, wake up in the morning. Going through heart surgery nights are very long. And so with the journey, I learned that what surprised me the most is that I was here and now, but it was the fact that I was able to gain control. Once I knew what I faced, now I was able to work with my care team, my spouse, my family member, because once a person goes through an event, it's not only that person that suffers, it's the whole family unit. And I was the mother, I was the nucleus. And so I leaned on everyone, and I let somewhat of control of, because I was always controlling. And I just let go, breathe, and took it one day at a time, understanding that I can fight this. And I learned every arsenal. I started gardening. I started learning about food and cholesterol, and really truly learning about diabetes and what the numbers truly means. So if you're going through something right now, you're not alone. If you're here for purpose. Just arm yourself with knowledge and fight the smart fight.
Well, that is a great advice in terms of this is a journey, but we're all here. You don't have to be alone. And you guys, I'm sorry, someone was talking about loneliness. I think it was you, Aaron, earlier, and that has created more, so much more feelings of despair and isolation, and it actually is causing heart disease at large rates. And so if you can connect in and know that you're here for a purpose, and you can be connected with others, I think that's very important. Thank you. And Mike, what about you? What has surprised you most?
The thing that Aaron just brought up about the depression, and I was glad he brought that up, because my cardiologist's wife is a depression counselor type person. And so we've had her come in and speak twice. And I guess I've been lucky about it. I've been very positive and not really had any problem with depression. But yet when we brought her in to speak, I was amazed at the number of people in our Mended Hearts meeting that just lit up. Boy, they were, and it's like we had given them the key to open up and talk about it. And whereas before everybody just kind of sat there and not even talked about it. So we've had her in twice now. A couple of people have started seeing her professionally, and are feeling more open to talk about it. And it's spawned more talking with the whole group. It's but that was kind of a surprise for me, because I didn't experience it, so I wasn't expecting it. And then,
Yeah.
but when we had somebody come in and speak on it, whew, it just, like I say, lit the room up, and that was a fantastic thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that happens with an organization like ours is it normalizes some of the things that people feel or experience, and it doesn't make you feel like, well, I don't want to admit this because I'm the only one going through it. You realize, oh yeah, a lot of people go through it, and this is not just me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of help in that as well. Tammy, there are a bunch of questions, I think, in here. I didn't know if you wanted to. We won't let me skip a couple, because we're gonna avoid talking about specific medications, just because we don't want to get into that, because different medications are different for different people. So I will let you guys answer this as the experts. I do, in fact, know the answer. But Aaron, can you tell us what the difference between HDL and LDL is, and why HDL is good and LDL is bad?
Well, simply put, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to measure LDL in terms of, the LDL size and different types of LDL. But in general, LDL sticks and HDL cleans it out. And
Mhm.
so ideally, your LDL, if your LDL is elevated, then you'll have, just generally there's a higher likelihood that you could have buildup, right? Because the LDL sticks and gloms onto the arteries, into the walls and things like that. And then the HDL comes through and sweeps it out. So if you've got high HDL and low LDL, that's generally considered a good ratio, so that you can, your blood's kind of working the way it's supposed to, and things aren't plaquing up.
Yeah, thank you. And the numbers, there are certain numbers you want. You want your total cholesterol to be below 200, but if you have heart disease, your ideal numbers will change, and they might be different for you as well. And so you just have to be aware of that and talk to your doctor. People are asking, and I think you all three could answer, how often you get checked and your blood tested. Mike, do you want to start first?
Yeah, that made me stop and think here a little bit. Of course, I get an annual, what they call it, Medicare wellness check. Get one of those all the time now, but I'm also participating in a study that it's Ozempic is the product. They're doing a study so they can say that Ozempic not only helps with diabetes, but helps lower having another issue with a heart attack or that type of thing. But it's been good that it's like, let's see, what is it there? About every 6 months, they do a blood panel just to see how that's going, what's it affecting, that type of thing. So I get to see it more regularly. But I would say that that's a big thing to stay on top of, because like I was running along, fat, dumb, and happy that I was within range, and it was a bad range, so, and like Javier was saying, ask questions, why is my good low, and what can I do to fix that? Because I found out that was a big key.
Huh, that's interesting, because so many people are focused on the LDL and the triglycerides, in a panel, but less so the HDL. So that's interesting. What about you, Hyvel? How often do you get your blood tested?
I'm on certain medication that requires me to have frequent blood tests. So
Mhm.
every 3 months, I have to have lab works done.
Okay. What about you, Aaron?
I do it twice a year, unless I get something that's alarming like I did the last time. So then, but generally it's twice a year. And I mean, I really, really have become familiar with my numbers.
Yeah. Okay. And someone brought up that the cholesterol is not a problem of the heart, which we do realize that but it raises your risk of heart disease, and so you have to be aware of it. It affects your cardiovascular system when plaque builds up inside your arteries. So I appreciate that clarity there. Laura asked, how involved were the people who became part of your support network? Those of us without partners, is there a place for help from Mended Hearts people? So I don't know, Aaron, if you want to start with that, and then Mike and Hyvel.
Yeah, my experience was the lights went on for me when I went to rehab. When I went to rehab, and suddenly there were people around me who had been through the experience, I just felt like, oh my God, these people understand a level that it's really difficult. The heart issue, it's probably less so if you have cholesterol, but if you've had heart surgery or a heart attack or things like that, it's difficult to talk to regular people about it because they just get scared. And so they get scared and they act all afraid and they just dump it on you. And it's like the last thing that I need is someone else telling me how afraid they are of heart disease. I'm just like, I'm dealing with it. I'm good. But it's also difficult. Like my family is there for me for sure, but they don't have direct experience. They don't know the issues, the pain, weirdness, weird things happen with your body. You heal on a certain pace. You're worried about certain things. You get to rehab, and suddenly everybody there knows exactly what you're talking about. That was a big, big thing for me, and that's what made me look into, who's out there that's doing peer support. That's how I found Mended Hearts, and I said, "Oh, is there a Mended Hearts in Puget Sound? Oh, there's not one here." It's like, well, there should be, so let's start one. So we did. That's literally how it came together because I saw how much of an impact it had on me to speak directly with other people who had been through the exact experience, just how direct that connection is and how helpful that connection is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, for me, it was isolating because, your mother, your husband, your wife, and you have no one, an outlet, and you just, kind of go in. But my first time I went to, because I didn't even go to cardiac rehab because after the initial open heart surgery, I had 4 more surgeries after that. So every time it was cardiac rehab, I couldn't go because there was another issue to deal with. But the first meeting I went to with Mended Hearts, and I sat in there, I had on my coat, I was always cold. And this elder gentleman, and I was the youngest person in there, of course. And he was talking about how he's always cold. And I'm like, wait a second, I can relate to that. And then the doctor says, it could be because it's blood issues. And then I made that connection. I'm like, well, if he's feeling that way, I'm feeling that way. And there was kind of like a bond, because now I know somebody's going through it, that's been through it, that had open heart surgery, that is actually thriving. And I'm like, I need this. I need this in my life. So I started going to the meetings and I started gaining confidence, knowing that people who has been through with their road that I'm traveling on, and they're there just to lift you up and to help you along the way.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, the one of the things that it's a resounding note that keeps coming up in our meetings is that people that, especially new ones, will come and say, oh, everybody just looks at me and I don't look like I'm sick. And so they just, how you doing? Well, I'm having this issue or that issue. Oh, well, you look fine. And boom, it's like they don't want to hear about anything else. And so they having somebody to talk to that's been there, done that, really is a big help. But because people don't understand what's happened to you and the effect it has. So having a peer support is great.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that you guys brought up the main thing about peer support is just that you realize you're not the only one going through something, and it does, no matter who you are, it creates a feeling that you're not alone and you're not isolated. And I think right now in our world, we need that more than ever before. So it's a very important thing. And we just have a couple more minutes, but I want to ask you this question. There were a lot of questions in the chat box about side effects and how you know if it's a side effect from the medication or from having heart disease. And part of that was one person was like, the doctor would not believe that their side effects were from the medication. So what would you say? What kind of advice would you give about side effects? And Aaron, there was a specific one about the injectables too, if you're having side effects from that.
No, I'm, maybe lucky, but I've had no side effects from the injectables that I know about. It's really complicated when you're coming out of surgery because there's so much going on in your body that it's often difficult to tell, like what's a side effect versus like what's just wacky now. So there's that. But the one thing I do find with a lot of heart patients is just making sure that people feel empowered to listen to their own intuition, listen to themselves. Because generally, what I've found is like if I really kind of listen in internally, I know what's going on, right? And so I can tell what's happening. And I'm lucky because I found my cardiologist now because I went to my other cardiologist and I got an answer that didn't make any sense to me. So I said, okay, well, I went back after heart surgery and he looked at it. He said, okay, great. I'll see you in a year. And I'm like, you're going to see me in a year? What are you talking about? Like there's a lot of stuff I got to figure out. So I switched doctors, and I think it's really important with this kind of thing that you have a doctor that you think listens to you and you can trust. If you don't have that, you should move on right away because this stuff, there's not enough margin for error in it. Like there's a lot of, and you really do have to learn to trust your body and trust what you think because no one else can tell you. No one else is in your body. No one else can feel it. So you have to trust what you feel. And then you have to make sure that your doctor is listening to you and hearing you and acting on it and not trying to diminish it or say that you're not experiencing something that you are actually experiencing.
Well, then in my case, I had many side effects. I had rhabdomyolysis, there was pain and stuff, but it was so important. Even I had to fight my pharmacy, my insurance company as far as getting prior authorizations because the doctor felt like there was certain medications that was not in my tier that would be better for me. And we tried a few until I found one that worked. And it's so important that we know that we can, fight the insurance company, talk to your doctor. If one generic is not working, probably the name brand or a different brand. So it's so important. Your doctor is your ally and he knows exactly what medications to navigate. And, granted I had to fight the insurance company, but I had my ally, my doctor on my side. He was there helping me along the way. That communication has to be there. And like Aaron said, if there's a doctor that don't work for you and you see that the communication that was not there, fire them, find someone new. It's your life.
Thank you so much, Hyvel, and I appreciate I know it's last minute, but bringing up that if you can't get it, just keep fighting until you do. You need to get the medication that works for you, and it's very important that you're treated to the guidelines and that you're treated with the medications that are going to get you to the right numbers. What about you, Mike, with side effects?
I haven't really had any with the medicine, but one of the things we keep hearing in our meeting quite often is COVID side effects. You know, they talk about the long COVID, and several of the patients have complained that oh well, you know, I'm taking this medicine, I'm seeing these side effects, and they're going, oh well, that's probably long COVID, and they ignore them, and like Abel and Aaron was saying, that they finally switch doctors, and they get the right one that goes, oh yeah, this is a definite to do with your medicine. It has nothing to do with COVID. So yeah, you know, be diligent. Don't just accept the first thing you get told.
Well, I just want to say you guys are outstanding, and I could talk to you all night. You're so interesting, and I think the things you have shared tonight are going to be helpful to so many people. And cholesterol is a confusing thing, as you all brought up, but when we have conversations like these, it can help the patients understand it better. So I appreciate you all being here tonight. You were amazing, and this will be recorded for those of you watching, and even to share with people who couldn't attend. And we will be sharing that as soon as it's on our channels, and we will share it on our website as well. You guys have a wonderful evening, and thank you again.
And thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye, thank you.